Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. I hope this is all working and you're able to see and hear me okay. I'm afraid it's not FPL Nacho this week that's going to be joining you for the Friday night stream. It is in fact myself, FPL Phillips, but we are nonetheless back and ready to get going, answering some of your questions and covering some important topics. So let me know if everything's going okay in the chat. That'd be much appreciated if we can get the all clear before continuing. If you are new around here, whilst we're getting the all okay, make sure to do subscribe to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel if you're seeing us for the first time. But it's good to see some of the regular names that I see when I do drop in the chat. It's very nice to see all of those names down there. So yeah, thank you to everyone who is choosing to tune in and join us. And if you're excited for the stream, make sure to leave a thumbs up down below. But yeah, nice to see Tom, Cheekster, welcome to the stream. Nikolai as well. Thank you everyone for hopping in. 11 viewers. So yeah, everyone who's excited, make sure to drop a thumbs up. 16 we're jumping up to now. I'm afraid I haven't streamed in a while, so if I'm a bit rusty, then feel free to, let me know, pick me up on things that if I miss certain details or whatnot. But yeah, George as well, welcome to the stream. We're going to be talking a bit about two different drafts today, actually. I've got two different drafts to show you. One that's a bit more conventional and my own team reveal. I finished 2000th. So I can't even remember exactly where it was, 2000th around roughly in the world last year. So I've got my team reveal to show you as well. And then an alternative draft, which is a little bit further away from the template and also something else that I'm considering going with. And we've also got some key debates to touch on and basically the differences in the personnel between the two drafts, some of the biggest questions that people are asking at the moment. And yeah, so without further ado, let's hop in and have a look at this very first team. So this team is going to be lining up in a 4-4-2 formation. So this is going to be my own personal team and my draft that I'm currently sitting on right now. If we just kick it off straight away with the goalkeeper, and in goal between the sticks for myself, it's going to be Ederson of Manchester City, who I'm going with. I really do like the 5.5 million bracket for the goalkeeper, and basically it's Ederson or no one, to be honest, for me at that point, so I really like Ederson. At 5 million, there's Mendy as well, who I'm less keen on, to be honest, with how Chelsea have been performing in pre-season, and then obviously there are quite a few 4.5 million keepers who do look pretty decent. Welcome to Wayne as well, in the chat. Let me know what you think of my team once we have revealed the bulk of it, because I am interested to get your guys' feedback as well as answering some of your questions regarding your own personal teams. Ederson at 5.5 is coming in for me just because I want a way into the Man City defence, and 5.5 provides some pretty decent value for that. Now, Cucurella, the situation unfortunately is still unknown, but every day it gets closer to the game week 1 deadline, we're actually looking more likely to be able to go for the likes of Kyle Walker at 5 million, who looks like a very decent option. Of course, basically with Ederson and Walker, either way you're getting no attacking threat pretty much. I mean, Walker has limited amounts, but nowhere near the likes of Cancelo, and arguably some of the centre-backs even offer better options. Now, the news recently has been that Laporte has been ruled out until at least September, I think the news was, so that has slightly weakened the appeal of the Manchester City defence for me. I think Stones will come in and offer a pretty decent option at 5.5 million as well. So yeah, I do not mind that at all, going with John Stones if he does prove out to be the one who's been preferred. John Stones in the past has proven he's got some pretty big hauls. 5.5 isn't a bad price, but really, if Cucurella doesn't sign, Walker's the standout at 5.0. But until then, Ederson, I think, is the number one pick to go for, unless you're going for Cancelo at 7 million. Diaz, again, slightly weakened as an option, although, of course, he'll be more nailed and pretty much no rotation threat due to the fact that Laporte's out. I still do prefer Ederson and Cancelo, and then, of course, Walker, who's on the fence at the moment. Wayne brings up a good point that Ake could play some games. I think Ake could fill in at left back as well if need be. Pep said that, if they don't get a left back, that's something that they'll deal with. He doesn't seem desperate for a new signing, but of course managers are unlikely to seem like they're desperate for signings in an interview. So I do imagine that they're still pushing for Cucurella. I do imagine that they're trying to play hardball with Brighton, making Cucurella, who today did hand in a transfer request. So it's going to be interesting to see. Does Cucurella end up at Manchester City? If so, what's Pep going to take? The approach that he normally takes is integrate the players relatively slowly into the new system, which of course is going to be, that different play style for Cucurella. I'm sure he can adapt to it, but Pep's unlikely to just throw people in at the deep end. He's not done that too much in the past, and I don't see him starting off when he's got Cancelo and Walker there. But speaking of defenders, let's just move in and have a look at the defence of my team, and that's going to be a defensive four of some pretty template picks, you would have to say. Trent Alexander-Arnold, I don't really want to spend much time talking about, 7.5 million. As I have to say in every video these days, it's just a pretty ridiculous price to put him at, and yeah, we should be all having him in every single draft that we're making. Him and Salah really are the must-haves in the game. You have to have them in your teams, or you've got really big fear of missing out, and that fear is probably going to become a reality in terms of missing out. Cancelo and James then come in, so I do currently have double Manchester City defence. I was on Chilwell for a bit of time before how poorly Chelsea have been doing in pre-season, which meant I had a mil spare in the bank, but I've used that mil spare to upgrade to Cancelo, which I think is a very sensible thing to do realistically. So let me know if you're considering any other premium defenders despite the three that I've got in here, and the third one being Reece James of Chelsea. So I've got James in despite not having Chilwell. I prefer James as an option, slightly concerned that he might play at centre-back some games, but they don't look like they're anywhere near signing a right wing back right now, despite recent rumours, and seem to be only rumours linking them to Dumfries. So Reece James, I think, will be starting there. The back four that they've been playing in pre-season is a slight worry as well. Part of me's tempted to go with 0 Chelsea, but going from, double Chelsea to dropping down to 0 does feel like it's really gonna backfire. We don't need to put too much emphasis on pre-season. It's still safe to start with the James. He's at a nice price range as well, where I could switch him across to a different defender at that kind of price bracket. If I don't end up on the double City defence already, I can of course switch across to the likes of Díaz at that same price point. And then I've got another nice price point covered in Zinchenko of Arsenal, who of course looks like he could be a decent prospect for playing out of position. I personally think he's going to play a lot of his minutes in midfield. I know the start of the season might be a point where he starts off playing left back of the back four, with Ben White probably covering on the other side for the injured Tomiyasu right now, who is still seeing in quite a lot of drafts. But Zinchenko at 0.5 more than either White or Tomiyasu or Saliba, who I've seen in a few drafts, does look like a very enticing pick. I also do like the look of Gabriel at Arsenal, who does look great when we look at the data on Fantasy Football Fix with regards to expected goal involvements. Very nice in terms of 0.11 expected goal involvements per 90, which is pretty impressive for a centre-back. And of course, the majority of that comes from set pieces, and Arsenal are playing some pretty poor team set piece-wise in their first two fixtures, with Leicester being the most goals conceded from set pieces in the league last year, and they're playing them in their first two games, along with Crystal Palace, who were also around joint second or third for goals conceded from set play. So Gabriel's another one I'm considering. It's just always quite hard to overcome the urge to not spend 5 million on a centre-back in FPL. It's always a little bit like, oh, do we spend that there? Could we go across for someone like a Matty Cash or a Trippier, who are probably more exciting to watch? You don't want to be only getting excited to own your asset when they're heading up for a corner, hey, with Gabriel, because that's pretty much what you get when you get Gabriel in your sides. But that's my defence. Let me know what you think of that. Let me know what other midfielders you're you're considering. But midfielders, now is when we're going to have a look at those. And I think you can tell who my captain is already. I've already said he's a must-have. It's Mohamed Salah at 13 million. Absolutely no surprises there. Nobody is shocked to see him in my team, and he will be in my team come game week 1. I can assure you of that, barring any horrific injury or anything like that in the Community Shield tomorrow. Luis Díaz then also joins it as my third Liverpool pick. I'm sure some of you guessed that, given the fact that I don't have Robertson in my draft. But I'm going with Díaz. I think he's my favourite 8 million midfielder by a little bit, quite some distance, to be honest. The news of Jota's injury being more serious than first thought has pushed me even further into the Luis Díaz camp. And so, yeah, I've gone with him, and I've gone with Cancelo at the back instead of going for Robertson, which was basically the other alternative, was to switch Cancelo out to Robertson and then go Díaz across to someone else, maybe like a Bukayo Saka or one of the Manchester City midfielders in Mahrez. So Mahrez and Robertson versus Díaz and Cancelo has been on my mind quite a bit. I really like the thought of Mahrez if he's on penalties, and he looks like a great pick. He's probably maybe even second in terms of my 8 million midfielder rankings. Saka's up there as well, of course, with then Maddison and Mount falling a bit behind, Foden as well, given the fact he's not played in pre-season. And then Kulusevski, I think, is just a minute's risk, so I'm not going anywhere near him. But nonetheless, I've shown you how many 8 million midfielder options there are. So it's important to fill that slot, I think, and I've covered that price bracket in my team just so that I'm able to switch across and have some flexibility. But yeah, seeing a lot of people in the chat saying how kind of similar my draft is to theirs, George especially. So yeah, this is quite a template team. I'm aware of the fact my team is very template, but I just think these players are the best picks, and I know that the other two midfielders I've got in are also very popular too, with Martinelli at 6 million and Neto at 5.5 million. Another one I'm considering is, of course, Leon Bailey. I also like the look of Marcus Rashford, who add up to the same exact price, but I don't want to go too far away from there, and I really would just be going for them just because they're lower ownership, rather than the fact that I think they're actually going to do better. Martinelli, in terms of penalties, I'm not 100% sure. Arsenal fans, could you maybe help me out? Who is on penalties at Arsenal? I can never seem to get a straight answer. Some people I've seen saying Saka for sure. Some people, Jesus could come in and be on penalties. Martinelli's there as well. I don't know who the number one penalty taker is going to end up being this season, but there's potential there for Martinelli to have it at 6 million with those fantastic fixtures that they've got. I really think he's an absolute steal at 6 million. I said before the game even launched, before the prices were even out, if Martinelli is 6.5 or below, he's going to be in my team by game week 1. And so far, so it's happened. He is 0.5 cheaper than I even expected, and he's in every single draft I've been doing, bar a few obscure abstract differential ones, basically. And then Neto, who probably will be playing out of position now. Well, Podence will filling through the middle, but Neto in a very advanced role as well, of course. Neto and Podence going to be filling the main void in that attack left by Raul Jimenez, given the fact that he's picked up an injury that could rule him out to up to 8 weeks. So yeah, Neto, I think you have to go with him, really. As I mentioned, there's the opportunity to go with Bailey, but Neto's really, I think, a stronger pick. He has the better fixtures over a longer period of time. Of course, Bailey has some really nice first 3 fixtures, but after that, they get a bit ropey, and I like the look of Neto. He's only really got a tough game in game week 3 where Wolves face Tottenham, and that's the only time I'd really want to bench him. And I could even rotate him with someone on my bench. I don't need to get rid with a transfer like I probably would have to with Bailey. And when we look at rotation and stuff like that, I don't really like the thought of rotating Bailey with someone, because you basically would be playing Bailey for those first 3 games, and then not playing him again for like another 4 game weeks or something. So by that point, you may as well use a transfer. It's not really worth the rotation. Strongly advise you look at Neto's data with Raul out. Yep, there is a gulf there. I know that it is definitely a difference, of course, with Neto performing with Raul Jimenez versus without Raul Jimenez. You can do that by using the player heat maps tool over on the Fantasy Football Fix website, which is an excellent feature. You can add teammates that are on the pitch, teammates that are off the pitch, and compare data brilliantly. The links are in the description to access that, of course. So Neto, I think there's one thing to consider there. That's a very good point. Jimenez being out injured, how's the data different? Is Bailey going to offer a better option? But I still like the fact that Bailey's at that lower price point, so I can still downgrade Neto to Bailey if need be when the season starts. But by the point I'm probably looking at making that transfer anyway is most likely when the Villa fixtures turn. The other option, of course, being leaving 0.5 million in the bank, starting with Bailey, potentially switching across to Neto after game week 3, but we all know the price changes could make that not be available by that point. I'd have 2 free transfers, so I could use the 2 free transfers after game week 3, but you never know, and there's no telling what I might need to change in my team given the unpredictability of this game up to that point. I cannot book in a transfer that I'm going to do in game week 3 right now. There's just too much that could change. But yeah, we're going to move into and have a look at my forwards then finally. I bet it's pretty easy to predict my forwards, and yeah, Gabriel Jesus is obviously going to be there. Completes an Arsenal triple up, which I'm not concerned about having at all. I know a lot of people sometimes just look at a triple up when it's not from Man City and it's not from Liverpool, and they go, oh, you need to be a bit concerned about that. But look at the fixtures for Arsenal. They've got players in great form with great underlying data. I'm not going to avoid going on a triple up for them just for the sake of not having a triple up. No way at all. And then I've got Haaland, who, to be honest, could change out for Kane at any moment right now. It's really is neck and neck for me between those two. I'm just not 100% sure who I'm going to end up on. I know a lot of people looking like they want to change out, potentially starting with Kane and switching to Haaland in game week 2. I know a lot of sensible people as well advising against booking in a transfer for the exact reason that if Kane performs poorly in game week 1 and Haaland performs well against West Ham, Haaland could go up in price to 11.6, sorry, I don't know where 16 came from, and then you would be priced out of that move if you don't have anything left in the bank. So that's something I'm a little bit concerned about, so I wouldn't be wanting to book in a transfer. I think if I'd start with Kane, I would start with Kane. hopefully, you could jump on maybe if the price change doesn't happen, but we all know how volatile those are at the start of the season, and we can see the history of that, and we can see that when it happens during the price change predictor that you can access over on the Fantasy Football Fix website, funnily enough. And if you want to see more content from us and you're enjoying the stream, do make sure to subscribe. That red button down below really does help us out, and make sure to leave a thumbs up if you're enjoying it as well. It really is great to see all you folks supporting the channel, so thank you very much for all the activity in the chat down below, and yeah, feel free to keep bringing in the discussion. I will be taking a lot of your points down from the live chat just after we've revealed the bench, which is, speaking of which, Balcombe on the bench as a goalkeeper. It's just going to be any 4.0 keeper. Then we've gone with Nico Williams, Andreas Pereira, and just any 4.5 forward at the moment, and between Archer and Plange. But let's be honest, it really doesn't matter. They're probably not going to play at all either way, and so I'm just going to go for whoever I think's got the highest prospect of getting a few minutes here and there, just in case they're called upon in my team for whatever horrendous reason. But I don't imagine that being very often. Hopefully not at all, with the 5-sub rule especially. Nico Williams and Andreas are pretty much renowned as the top budget bench options at the moment and enablers for your teams. There's Patterson as well at Everton, who I really do like the look of too, but I just do fancy Nottingham Forest, maybe even over Everton at the moment. So I'd argue Nico Williams is in a stronger team, playing in that back 5 wing-back role that Nottingham Forest have been using quite strongly. So he'll slot in there for a very cheap price, I think. Got to have him in your side if you're going for a 4.0 defender, personally. And then Andreas, the other one I was considering was De Silva. I just think he's slightly too much of a minutes risk, and when it's on the bench as a 4.5 midfielder, I don't think it's worth taking a punt, so to speak, on a player, despite the fact that De Silva has a strong fixture against Fulham in game week 3 where they face each other, Andreas and De Silva, so I could bench Neto for one of them then. I think that Andreas, I'm just going to stick with him. Brentford, as I mentioned, isn't a bad fixture either, and Andreas on set pieces, he's already got 2 assists from corners in pre-season 2. Mitrovic in the box, I think he's just a bog standard pick to have, and there's good evidence for why he's going to be the strongest pick to have. So you may have noticed some key absences in my team, and we're going to have a look now at a bit of a different draft with a different formation, and have a look at basically the differences here, comparison between a few of the key dilemmas that I'm having and what could change in my team before the game week 1 deadline, which is in under a week now, guys. Absolutely incredible. So yeah, here we go. This is a little bit of a different draft. I've gone with a 5 at the back formation instead, and Robertson's come in for Luis Díaz, which is the first key thing you may point out. Martinelli's also gone for Rashford. Of course, that could just be a downgrade straight back to him, and upgrade to Rashford if need be, but I've just put him in there to show that there is a different option at that price point, but may well leave 0.5 million in the bank if I did end up with this draft and just have that available there, which is very nice to have. As I mentioned, you could then have that 0.5, start with Kane, have that in the bank to be able to switch across to Haaland in game week 2 where he faces Bournemouth. But yeah, make sure to leave a like if you're enjoying the stream, guys. By the way, follow Tom's advice down there in the live chat. But one of the key debates that we've been having this season, and you can see in the differences between the draft, is going to be Luis Díaz versus Andy Robertson. Who's the best pick to go for? And in terms of expected FPL points last season, what you can see is it comes out in favour of Robertson. And now, obviously, when we're looking at expected goal data and expected assist data, it's going to be slightly in favour of Luis Díaz, or you'd at least expect it to be, given the fact that he's the more attacking player of the two. Of course, with Liverpool's system, you've got Robertson getting forward one hell of a lot of time, same with Trent on the other side, but still, you'd argue Díaz is the most more attacking of the two options. So goal and assist data is a bit skewed. You can see it there, and it's taken from the Opta Statistics part of the Fantasy Football Fix website. And then if we're looking towards expected FPL points, that's going to, of course, include stuff like expected clean sheets and things like that, which is also included in that total there. So Robertson comes out on top when you look at that, and I really do like it as a statistic. I love the expected FPL points and looking at it. It's not too far off. The FPL points is actually further ahead than the expected FPL points were. No, 0.59 difference, and in terms of expected in terms of real FPL points per 90, versus only a 0.1 difference per 90 in terms of expected FPL points. Sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful. You can see it on screen and visualize it for yourself if I'm getting you all muddled. But yeah, basically, Robertson comes out better in terms of expected data. It's just really considering the other different options at different price points around that. And really, I'd like to stick with my 4-4-2. I know that adding an extra defender can be advantageous, but for the flexibility, the balance, I just like having it there. The defenders offering better value, I feel, is almost a little bit of a curse rather than actually a strong thing. The thing it being that if Robertson, for some reason, you want to get rid of him, or you want to get rid of one of your big premium defenders, if you downgrade them to, say, a 5 million midfielder, you've only got 2 million there, so it's not always enough to make a big upgrade. I know that, for example, I could upgrade Rashford with that to an 8 million midfielder, but if I had Martinelli and I got 2 million, and then I wanted to upgrade to an 8 million midfielder who's hit form, I could be priced out of that relatively easily. So sometimes, if you're not set on having that team structure for a long period of time, you're actually having less money held up in these players can be not as strong as it looks, because when you downgrade in order to boost funds elsewhere in the team, you're not actually getting that much money out of an asset. And I know that sounds stupid, almost contradictory, but if you think about it, it kind of does make sense. So that's kind of why I like Díaz at the moment. I can also downgrade him to other midfielders. There are lots of cool midfielders and great options at Díaz's price point and those below as well. We've got Sancho at 7.5 million, Grealish at 7 million if he seems to be getting a lot of minutes in that Man City side. I've already run through all the 8 million options, but I've already talked about Rashford, Martinelli, these picks as well. But yeah, that is another concern with this draft, is that it doesn't cover the 8 million midfielder price bracket. If you downgrade Robertson, you'd have to go all the way down to, you have to go to a 5.5 at least to be able to upgrade Rashford, who's the second most expensive midfielder in this team, to an 8 million if they stay at their starting price. So yeah, that's basically what I've gone for here. And FPL Louis asks, would you not rather have a 5.0 defender over Neto in the first draft, Eddie? And there's an argument for that. I know having a 5.0 defender could be argued that it's stronger than having a 5.5 midfielder. But like I mentioned, it's hard to move the money out of that, and you've not got much money at all to squeeze out of a 5 million defender. You can only, of course, get 1 million out by going to the cheapest asset, which isn't a lot to put into another position. So I like the versatility and the balance that I've got in my 4-4-2. I think Neto's a stronger option than all the other 5 million defenders I've got. Zinchenko, maybe there'd be an argument there, but I've got him in my draft anyway, so I don't need to have that debate. But yeah, I like Neto as a pick. I think a lot of people have got to the point where they're overthinking him a bit. When he came out at 5.5, of course, everyone's had him in their team for quite a long time. And so we get to that point where you're knee-jerking, you're thinking, oh, maybe he's not as good an asset as everyone's seen, maybe he's being overhyped, or maybe we should just play it and actually go with who we think are going to get the most points without letting too many other people sway our minds. So I'm sticking with Neto. I can't see that changing too much before the deadline unless we get some other news. Of course, there's always unexpected things that can happen. But yeah, that is my analysis to do with Neto, really. I do want him in my team, basically, is the conclusion from that. And then the other main difference between these two drafts is going to be Marcus Rashford versus Gabriel Martinelli. And you may look at that and immediately think, hang on a second, what's all that bloody green on the right next to Marcus Rashford? And actually what I've done here is I've not taken Rashford's statistics from last season, which of course would put him in the mud compared to Martinelli. I've taken his data from the 1920 season when Marcus Rashford was actually in some sort of decent form. And I know that's a bit of a long shot. It's not really fair to compare a player's more historic form versus another player's more recent form. Of course, more recent form is going to be a more accurate representation, in theory, of what's going to happen in the 22-23 campaign. But I've taken Rashford's form just in case, just to showcase what he can do when a manager's actually getting the best out of his ability that we know is there. And when we look at the FPL points, and expected FPL points in particular, Rashford does actually kind of wipe the floor with Martinelli. I know that Martinelli is, getting older, more mature. He's still only 21, but he's going to have probably the best season of his career, I'd predict, so far this year. You'd hope so anyway, at least. I'm sure a lot of Arsenal fans are. But when we look at the data there, we've seen what Rashford can do with his ability, and he can actually hit that when he's in form. Man United's fixtures aren't actually the best. You can look at that using the fixture analyzer over on the Fantasy Football Fix website, and you can compare not actually just the total fixture difficulty, but you can split it up so you can look at just the attacking fixture difficulty, which I've done in preparation for this video. And so when you look at Arsenal, they rank much higher in terms of attacking fixture difficulty over the first 5 game weeks and more than Manchester United. And that will of course be because United face people like Liverpool in game week 3, they face Leicester as well, who haven't been too shabby of a defence in historical data. So yeah, I think Rashford can be a big differential, and he's got that ability there. He can be recalled. Ten Hag, I think, has that managerial, he's got that about him, that he can get the best out of players who've been pretty naff in these past few years. Anthony Martial, Marcus Rashford, I can see these guys having a big season, and of course, because they've been so poor in recent years, they've had this price drop down to 7 million for Martial, 6.5 for Rashford. And I really do think they've made a little bit of a mistake with that pricing. What was Rashford price last year? Like 9 million or something ridiculous, right? And it's still at some times people were considering bringing him in, and the season before that and much more. So yeah, that's my assessment really, is just keep your eye on Marcus Rashford. I definitely think he's probably one to watch and wait and see. Maybe after game week 3 will be when we can make a better analysis of that. But yeah, that's my real just opinion on the whole thing, is that a lot of people saying Martinelli's a way better option than Rashford. I wouldn't be so sure. Maybe because of the fixtures. If United had better fixtures than Arsenal, we'd be considering going the other way. But of course, we'd have to take fixtures into account with FPL. So yeah, Martinelli I still think is the one to go for. But there is a case there for going for Marcus Rashford. So yeah, that's the differences in these two drafts really. Of course, the main other one is Harry Kane versus Haaland, which we've already discussed. So I'm looking now to take some questions from the chat, and hopefully that can get some talking points for us from you guys and get you all involved with the stream. Bandido asks, how Jimenez's injury affecting your views on Neto as a candidate in your team? Have you seen the numbers? I haven't got the numbers in my head. I've looked at it, and I've seen a few things on Twitter as well. It's pretty significant, isn't it? If anyone has the numbers to hand and could put them in the chat, that would be much appreciated. But yeah, I can head over to the website and get them if we've run out of questions and points to discuss. But yeah, I'll have to whip out my subscription for that, which you can get your own of and get the free trial free before the start of the season by heading over and down to the description if you haven't already. Signed up to fantasyfootballfix.com. Of course, loads of cool, great free features as well. George asks, are you considering Grealish for Martinelli? I think I'll just keep Martinelli. Offers insane value, but so does Grealish. I agree there. I personally think Martinelli is just got much more potential for minutes, to be honest. Even though he's $1 million cheaper, Smith Rowe hasn't played in pre-season. I think, what's he got, like 30 minutes or something? He had 30 minutes like before the last 2 games. I don't think he's even featured at all in those either. If Arsenal fans have been watching, then definitely let us know if he's played more than I think he has. But Martinelli's going to start, basically, isn't he, with Jesus and Saka in the front 3. Whereas Grealish, I know Foden's not been away on the pre-season tour, and it could very well likely be Mahrez, Haaland and Grealish on the left. I think that there is more of a threat from Foden to Grealish's minutes than there is from Smith Rowe's to Martinelli. So going for a player at a lower price point who could potentially be on penalties as well, and as I mentioned, is more likely to start, I think Martinelli does just offer that bit more than Grealish. But you know, I'm not put off Grealish in any way. I do think that Mahrez offers a better option than Grealish, which is why I'm a little bit surprised to see so many big names in the FPL community going with Grealish. But I know he does have some pretty good data from last season, despite not being able to convert much of it into returns. He did have some pretty nice underlying data. As Shamble says, even as a Man U fan, I'm way too wary to have them in my team until I can watch them more. Well, I'm a Man United fan as well, and you're right, we've not been able to see too much of them in pre-season, but we've seen a decent amount, and we've seen, most importantly, how Ten Hag is lining up, and he's got a set system in place. It's going to be a front 3 of Sancho, Martial, and Marcus Rashford as well. We're yet to see how Christian Eriksen and Lisandro Martinez will be integrated into the system, but still, I'm not worried about that. The front 3 is pretty much set in stone. So yeah, I agree. We need to see, can they convert, what they've been working on into some actually decent Premier League form. And whilst the fixtures aren't the absolute best early on, that's the time to sit, hang tight and wait and see with them and then move to the transfers afterwards. Not just going for them out of the sake of it. I think it is right to have Martinelli in your team over Marcus Rashford. I think that is the sensible thing to do, and it might end up being, the template thing or whatever, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I think it's what's going to score you the most points. Yeah, and hopefully you agree with me on that, can make the same decision as me, and hopefully end up scoring better in your FPL teams. Is Martinez Manchester United defender safe to go with? That's Reagan. So, yeah, on the topic of Man United, we may as well cover that as well. 4.5 million he's been brought into the game at a very, very nice price, of course. I think he's going to be nailed, to be honest. I can't see them bringing 55 million signing in to sit on the bench week in, week out. I know Maguire's kept the captaincy. Varane's there as well as an option. Even Lindelof, maybe could get some minutes here and there. But as a United fan, I think Lisandro Martinez is gonna play every game. Ten Hag's recruited him, in particular. He wants Lisandro Martinez in his squad. It is not going to be for rotation purposes. It's going to be a player he wants coming in to the starting 11. The problem with Martinez, really, is that his expected data's not that great. I know he's a brilliant passer of the ball. He can fizz great passes through to attackers, but really, you're not going to see him getting too many assists from that way. Most of the time, it's going to be maybe assist of the assist if it does go well. And really, there's not much expected goal data that's going to be there too. He's, not the tallest bloke. I know a lot of people have been going on about his height. I don't think that's too important, but he's not really a threat from set pieces in the air, is he? Let's be honest. And then he's not got threat from out of position. Sorry, not set pieces. He's not got threat from open play either, is what I was trying to say there. So Martinez at 4.5, I don't think it's a bad option. Any 4.5 starting defender, you always have to consider slightly, especially when they're at a historically pretty decent team. But then Dalot at 4.5 really is the main argument in terms of going without Martinez. And instead, just if you've gone for a 4.5 United defender, if you're going for a United defender at all, going Dalot seems the best route in terms of expected goals, expected assists. He's been doing well in pre-season. Wan-Bissaka looks completely out of favour. I would definitely go for Dalot if I was going for man of the Manchester United picks. And probably any 4.5 million defender in general, I would pick Dalot out of the load of them. Maybe Johnny perhaps off Wolves. I would want to have a look a little bit at how Johnny performs without Jimenez. There probably won't be too much data for that, but I would want to have a look at that as well before bringing him in. And then Dunk at Brighton 2, I think, is a pretty nice option down at 4.5 million. Tomiyasu and Ben White, I'm just a little bit put off by, also because of the fact that we've got Zinchenko at 0.5 more, which I have mentioned earlier in the stream. But thank you for that question. Madsat has, hello, two 8 million midfielders. So basically, you're considering getting 2 8 million midfielders. Downgrading Mount to get James instead, for Dalot and Ederson instead of Sanchez. What you think? That's quite hard to decipher, to be honest. Hang on. You have to bear with me as I read this again. Downgrade Mount to get James instead for Dalot and Ederson instead for Sanchez. I'd probably keep. I'd prefer Ederson and James if that's what you're saying you could get. I don't really fancy Mason Mount too much. I know he's a great asset. He's quite talismanic for Chelsea, especially without Lukaku in the team. He's going to be quite a big source of points for them. I know that Kai Havertz as well is an option there too. Raheem Sterling's been brought in, who's gonna, I'm sure, do pretty well. He's just unfortunately a little too highly priced to add in alongside 2 other premiums. But yeah, I've seen drafts with Sterling and 2 other premiums in, don't get me wrong, the 2.5 premium draft, if you will. But at the moment, I'm just waiting and seeing on those Chelsea assets. I think one will probably emerge as the main point scorer for them this season, and that's the point where I'll jump on. Maybe when the fixtures change for other teams and get slightly worse for Arsenal and Man City, perhaps is when I'll jump over. So yeah, Smith Rowe's pretty much injured, so it's resulting in Martinelli being nailed, whereas Grealish is not nailed. Pretty much is kind of what makes me want to go Martinelli instead. Saka or Mahrez is a very interesting debate from Amish. Thank you for your question, mate. As the questions do come in, make sure if you do appreciate me answering them, drop a thumbs up on the stream, and also do feel free to subscribe as well if you're just tuning in and you're new around here. That is much appreciated. But with regards to Mahrez versus Saka, the penalty debate is still something that does play on my mind with regards to both of them. They both have a potential to be on penalties. They also both have a potential to not be on penalties, of course, too. I'd say that Saka's maybe got more competition with Jesus and Martinelli rather than Mahrez, who Haaland's really the other threat to his penalty taking. The other threat to his penalty taking, Mahrez, being game time. If he's not on the pitch, can't take a penalty, can he? So I do just prefer Mahrez very slightly. But that's also because I think there are other great options at Arsenal. Like I said, Zinchenko, Martinelli and Jesus, they're all in my team. You can see them there in my squad. There's a lot, I'd argue there's more options at Arsenal, or more strong options anyway, than almost Manchester City at times. So I know that Mahrez takes up a Man City slot, but I think there's equal competition for picking your 3 Man City assets and picking your 3 Arsenal assets. So yeah. Thank you for that question. Neto's data without Roll is nearly identical. It seems to be worse without him. Yeah. Okay, so it's not too different, but I would be interested to see in previous seasons. Has there been much time? I know Jimenez has been ruled out with injuries and stuff, but they've both been players who have had unfortunate injuries in the past. So I wonder how much game time they've actually had not on the pitch together. Has there been long periods with that? I can't quite recall. But Dragon's going with an interesting question regarding Neto as well, and that price point that he's at. So Neto, Podence, Almiron or Bailey, which of these for the 5 million to 5.5 million players? And Almiron is the one who snuck his way in there. As the meme goes, it's a trap. But yes, was it 8 goal involvements in pre-season for him? Very fantastic record. But we've seen with Andreas Pereira, we've seen pre-season wonders in the past. I know he's actually made it into my team this time. But I do just think Leon Bailey is a better option than Almiron. Almiron will start on the right for Newcastle, I'm pretty sure of that. And I think Newcastle are going to have a good season. I'm sure it will translate into some points for him. But really, I think that Neto and Bailey are better picks. Podence, I'll be honest, a whole man's up I've not had a proper look at with Podence. Playing out of position through the middle in where Jimenez used to be, I think could be very nice. But he's going to face a threat from Hwang, obviously, for minutes, who's actually, he's now a midfielder at 6.0, I think it is, who's no one's actually talked about at all if he returns and is able to displace Podence from the team. But really, if you're going for a Wolves asset, I think it's just Neto. If you can have anyone from that bracket, 5 to 5.5 million, I think Neto's the one to go for. And then Bailey would probably be second choice for me. Podence and Almiron, to be honest, I probably avoids. I think you've got 3 players in that 5 to 6 million bracket in Bailey, Neto, and Martinelli, who you can't go far wrong with, and I think are the 3 best assets to own. Also, will probably depend on how Lager decides to adapt. Decides to adapt the system without Rolo. Different manager could mean different tactics. Yeah, I've definitely seen that, and I've seen people saying that there could be a defensive formation switch. Wolves weren't brilliant in terms of defense last season. I know Jose Sarr was saving their asses a lot of the time. So, yeah, it could be a case of maybe a defensive formation change. Maybe they're playing in the front 2 of Neto and Podence together. I'm not quite sure. I'm not a Wolves fan. I can't read the manager's mind. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, but Neto is still my favourite pick as of right now, and I'm not scared to still go with him, even with Jimenez out. Mahrez versus Díaz is tricky for me, says George. Yeah, it's tricky for a lot of people trying to decide. Louis says, Newcastle want a new winger and have lots of options. Almiron has been overachieving in pre-season. Podence can play up front if Neto doesn't with a lower ownership. And that is true. Podence will have a lower ownership come the start of the season. A lot of, influencers and, not influencers, but FPL... What do we even call ourselves? FPL managers or influential FPL managers. Not calling ourselves influencers. We don't want that reputation, do we? But people who are big in the FPL sphere have been bigging up Neto for quite a few weeks and even months now. So I'm sure that he's going to be very highly owned because of people watching those people and seeing him being sold as a great option, which he is, in fairness, and then not considering Neto because the most recent arguments for Neto. So Podence over Neto, have only just come in. Jimenez's injury is very recent, so of course in that stance, we're not going to see many people owning Podence, and we shouldn't be put off by low ownership. We're going to have Neto own a much higher ownership than Podence, and I still do just prefer Neto even when you take ownership out of the equation altogether, which I think you kind of should do when you're making your decisions. But yeah, I think Podence is definitely one to watch and keep your eye on. I will be speaking to more Wolves fans hopefully in the coming days before the start of the season, but I think it would take a decent amount to change my mind over to going with Podence instead of Neto. We're at 35 likes, guys, by the way. It'd be amazing if we could hit 50 likes on the stream, so if you haven't already, please do smash that thumbs up button. I'm hoping to get through all your chats before the end of the stream, so that is much appreciated if you could leave me a like in return. Foden, as I mentioned, not going on the preseason tour for him, I think is the main concern for me, as a lot of people go with Grealish as well at $1 million cheaper. Mahrez at the same price, I just think offer better options, to be honest. I think there's 2 better Manchester City midfielders there. I wouldn't go for Foden, but that's not to say that he won't be a great option at some point this season. I just don't think he's the best on paper to go with ahead of game week 1. Kane first fixture, and then Haaland switch across after game week 1, says Darren. And we have touched on this, actually. So, unless you have 0.5 in the bank, I wouldn't book in that transfer for game week 2. If you look at the predicted points, then Kane has a higher predicted points for game week 1, but Haaland has the higher predicted points over the first couple of game weeks. So, 5 game weeks or 6 game weeks, if you look at that, Haaland is quite far ahead. If you want to check out all the predicted points for every single player in the game, you can check those out via the website. Links are in the description as always for all those features you can access, which is absolutely amazing. I'm on the predicted points tour every day. Which is, maybe a bit sad, but I'm on a lot of the fantasy football fix features. It's quite a big part of my life, and I use that website one hell of a lot. So yeah, if you want to use those features yourself, it gives such a clear, easy way to use, and such a nice interface too. Click down below, use all the features there. The predicted points you can see for yourself, anyone that you're considering getting into your team. So I'm not a fan of booking in that transfer. I just do think that I'm going to go with Haaland right now. I know that it's hard to compare the Bundesliga tax or whatever we're going to call it, the drop-off for when Haaland comes in, but I really do think he's that different breed of player from the likes of Werner and Havertz that we've seen in the past. The main concern really with Haaland is just the individual training regime that he's been put on, the rush to get him fit for the start of the season. The Community Shield is tomorrow, which will give us some more info, so I recommend probably watching that. I'm sure lots of people will cover it and what's gone on if you're not going to see, but will Haaland play? Alisson's not playing in goal for Liverpool, which is something to consider. So if he bangs in a hat-trick, you never know. It'll be hard to avoid him, but he is still facing off against, not the strongest goalkeeper, but that won't make that much of a difference. So Haaland, at the moment, it's my number 1. That could change if we find out, he's injured and not gonna make the start of the season tomorrow. It's an easy switch over to Harry Kane. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the premium strikers at the moment. Hitesh has got a front 3 of Kane, Solanke, and Mitrovic. What's my thoughts on that? To be honest, I think you've got strikers from 2 teams that are getting relegated there. And Kane, I really like. Solanke and Mitrovic, maybe have one of them, but not 2. I think front 3s at the moment this year aren't even an advantageous thing to do. I think there's much better value in defence and in midfield as well. As I mentioned, we've gone through some great picks who are great value in both those positions. So Martinelli, Neto, Bailey, etc. in midfield. You've got Zinchenko at the back in defence, who you can see in my team here. I just think that going with a 4-4-2 or even, a 5-3-2 or maybe even a 1-striker formation is more advantageous. I'm assuming that with a front 3 of those 3, you're probably going to be starting them most weeks. I know Bournemouth's fixtures are pretty horrendous as well for the first few, so I wouldn't go with Solanke at 6 million. I think you're much better off just downgrading him to a 4.5 and putting that 1.5 million into somewhere else in your team to get a nice upgrade for yourself. For full teams, I'm sorry, I'm gonna skip them. I'll try, if we get to the end of the stream and we have some time left, I'll run through, but sometimes it just takes too long to read out someone's entire team and then visualise it in my own head, which maybe I'm not too good at doing, and then think about what I'd change. Who takes the penalties for Wolves, says Nipper? It's Jimenez, but given that Jimenez is obviously injured, I'm pretty confident it's going to be Neves. You may have to ask someone else, but I'm pretty sure it's Neves. If someone could correct me on that and knows otherwise, then yeah, feel free to do that. But I'm pretty confident it's Neves when Jimenez isn't on the pitch. Forum says, the way the Premier League is developing was no mid-table teams have good attack. So no teams will have more than 3 clean sheets all season. We'll go for 5 mil defenders and strengthen our attack. Oh god, there's too many no's in there. There's too many negatives. Hang on. All the mid-table teams have good attack. Yeah, so you're saying there's going to be a lack of clean sheets, basically. But with the fact that defenders offer so much attacking threat now, I think that's almost balanced out. By the fact that they score, more points for a goal, 6 points for a goal compared to 4 points for a forward for a goal, it is a pretty significant difference. I know forwards will still get more goals in general, anyway, generally speaking. But still, the attacking threat that fullbacks offer these days in the modern game, I think it's kind of outgrown FPL in a way, and that's why defenders are becoming such good value assets at the moment and really needed a price hike bigger than they've got for the wing backs, especially this year. The likes of Trent should be 8 million at least. Cancelo could be 7.5 easily. The Chelsea guys should probably be 6.5, maybe even 7 themselves. So I think with the fact that they're so involved in the game, they're basically like the wingers of old, I think you have to have the defenders at a more expensive price, and I definitely don't think that there's too much of an argument for going with 3 forwards this year and strengthening your attack over and at the cost of a weaker defence. Robertson over Díaz. We covered that, Cameron. If you scroll back a little bit to where you can see the graphic, you can see the discussion there with regards to Díaz and Robertson. I think I said that right, but yeah, you can see that if you scroll back a bit along your timeline. What about Morgan Gives White for Wolves? Big season for him. Yeah, and he's definitely been one in previous years who I've had my eye on in pre-season. Definitely could be a good option. He's not the cheapest price, which is a bit annoying, and I do think it will be a big season for him. I would have loved him down at maybe even a slightly cheaper price that he's at. I can't remember. Is he at 5.5? I can't actually remember, but yeah, I do agree that I think it'll be a big season for him. Not willing to punt on him from game week 1 when we've got Neto at 5.5. Opponents as well, I probably still do prefer the Gibbs White, given that the game time may not be there for him from the start of the season. 4.5 defender like Dallo, Justin Mings, that's for him. 5 million defender like Trippier, Walker, Cash, Zinchenko. Do we need Trent, Cancelo, James? Instead, get 3 big guys. So, okay, I do get you. There are good options. 4.5, you know, Dallo and Justin, Mings as well. The 5 million marks is kind of stacked with Zinchenko being added. There's nice options of Trippier, Walker, Cash, you've named there. But I still think that, you know, worth that 1 million extra to get up to a James. It's worth that bit extra to get up to a guy from a big team like Trent or Cancelo, who've got loads of great clean sheet potential as well, and more, you'd argue, than the likes of Trippier and Cash, of course. They do offer some great attacking threat. Trippier, of course, has got those free kicks as well. As long as he can stay fit, I think he's a great option. He's got tough fixtures in game week 3 and game week 5, which is the one thing that's putting me off Trippier a little bit, is the fact that he faces Liverpool and Man City inside the opening 5 game weeks. So I'd probably want to bench him for one or if not both of those weeks. I'm rotating with my bench at the moment. It doesn't look like much of a possibility, and I'm not too willing to start him for those fixtures. Robertson had 29 goal involvements, for whether it was a clean sheet, assist, or goal, only 29 involvements, so not goal involvement. So that's interesting to see a clean sheet and add it in with the goals and assists. That's quite interesting. I've never seen that before, but yeah. We'll be continuing to Eddie vs. the algorithm this season as well. It's a bit off topic, but I will be doing some form of algorithm video format this season. You can check out the first one of those that I did on the channel a couple of days ago, which did quite well. You can see the algorithm team reveal across the first 5 game weeks, and if that team's been updated, you can check that out using the link in the description of the video if the team has changed, but I don't imagine it's changed too much, if at all. You can see what the algorithm's predicting will score the most points across the first few game weeks by hitting that video. I can't put a card on screen right now, unfortunately, but if you head over to the channel page, you can see that. Or watch it at the end of the stream after we've finished, then feel free to go over and, and we'll give it a watch at the end. And do feel free to drop a like, guys. We're at 41 likes now. Thank you very much to everyone. So if I do answer your question and respond to your comment, then hopefully I was helpful in some kind of way. And if you drop a thumbs up, that would be much, much appreciated in return. If Haaland scores a hat-trick I'm assuming that, I don't know what the Community Shield. I'm more interested in who assisted him sticking to Kane, says Savio. Okay, interesting. So you're more interested in the Man City assets around Haaland. You're already set on going with Harry Kane. Okay, I'm sure that that's probably a wise thing to do. There's also, of course, going to be a lot of people who are swayed by who scores the goals rather than who assists them, especially casuals are going to see that game tomorrow, Haaland scoring. You know, I'm sure his ownership will rocket back up, and he'll probably maybe even overtake Jesus again before the start of game week 1. But interesting point there, thank you. When is Tierney back? I'm not actually too sure. We'll have to look at that. But even when Tierney's back, I don't see it affecting Zinchenko's minutes, basically, is what would be concerning if it were looking likely. But Zinchenko will just move into midfield if he's not already playing there. I think he'll only fill in at left back when he has to, when Tierney's not fit, basically. Neves took the last pen for Wolves that wasn't Jimenez. So thank you, Tom, for confirming there that Neves does look to be on penalties when the Mexican striker is not on the pitch. No defenders needed in teams. Formations like 0-8-2, wings backs are mids. Yeah, pretty. You're not wrong in FPL. You can basically end up with 4 defenders who are midfielders, but they score you clean sheet points pretty much with how the modern game's evolved. You can do that definitely. But I think it would be unrealistic to move some of these players into the midfielder bracket and force us to pick 3 centre-backs or something. I don't think that's viable. I think they should have just upped the prices, really. But I'm not going to rant on about that. I want to be answering your guys' questions. Will it hurt too much if I start off without any Chelsea assets? I mean, I can't predict the future, mate. But I think it's safer to go with one. Obviously, when we look at effective ownership, James looks like he's going to have the highest effective ownership. out of the bunch of the Chelsea defenders. So I'd probably go with James if you're looking to stay safe and not get hurt early on with your rank, which of course can be disheartening, but overall we should make sure to look at the big picture and realise that it's a marathon, not a sprint. I know it's a bit of a cringy cliche phrase, but at the end of the day, it's 38 game weeks long. The first few game weeks, if you make a mistake, you've got plenty of time to correct it. So I would not worry too much. There are players who start getting 0 in game week 1 because they've not joined the game yet, and they still finish at a pretty decent rank. So yeah, I wouldn't be too overly concerned about that, going without any Chelsea assets, and I'm more inclined to go with 0 than I am with 2, to be honest, at the moment. What about Mahrez? We've discussed Mahrez, mate. I'll maybe try and do the timestamps after the stream's ended so you can go back through and have a look. But I like Mahrez, my second favourite 8 million midfielder, just about. Could be on penalties as well. Great pick. I'd go with Mahrez if I was going with Robertson. I think if I could fit an 8 million in alongside Trent, Robbo and Salah in midfield. Last time Jimenez was out, it had a pretty big effect on the Wolves' performances. Neto at roughly 20% ownership, it's Bandido. Maybe worth considering how this can impact him as an asset. So yeah, let's give him some credit there. It's an interesting debate. The fact that Neto's underlying data wasn't too dissimilar when Jimenez was out. I'm not sure if Neto was actually fit the last time Jimenez was out. I don't think he was for the entire time at least. But yeah, I think the data with Neto back in the team, it'll be interesting to see. Was Jimenez's data when he was out also when Neto was out for a bit as well? Because missing the both of them is going to have a much bigger impact than just missing one of them, if that makes sense. Thank you for that, though. Engenane... Oh, sorry with your name there. This is... I'm sorry, mate. But he's got some options here with Cancelo, Trippier and Díaz. Option B, Robertson, Walker / Ake and Mahrez. Oh, that is a tough one. I would go for option A, Cancelo, Trippier and Díaz. Just about. If it was going to go B, it wouldn't be Ake, it'd be Walker. But again, that kind of a little bit depends. I mean, I'd still, if Cucurella does sign, obviously still go with option A, but the only way I'd consider option B is if Cucurella doesn't sign. It's very close. It's very tough to go with. I mean, you could still have Trippier in option B and go with that, but I have to stick with my option, which I've chosen in my own side. Cancelo and Díaz overall, I think, are better than going for Robbo and Mahrez. Just about, with Jota's injury looking serious, was mainly the thing that kind of tipped me over the edge. But I'm so on the fence with that. I've just chosen to go this way at the moment. If Doherty starts, would he be a better option than the other 5 mil defenders, such as Trippier or Zinchenko? I think yes, to be honest. I had a lot of notes and stuff on Doherty just before Spence actually signed for Spurs, which, to be honest, is looking less and less concerning every day. I know that Conte's made some comments in the past few weeks with how Spence was signing for the club, basically, not for him. He didn't particularly want Spence, he's hinted at. I think Doherty will still start. I just think there's a threat from 2 other options there, in Spence namely, and also, of course, Lucas Moura, who's come out and made some comments hinting that he could potentially convert Lucas Moura, as he's done with other players, into a wing-back on that right-hand side, who he could rotate with Doherty, compete for minutes, just as I'm sure that Perisic and Sessegnon will probably be doing on the other side as well. So that is just about what's putting me off at the moment, but if Doherty was nailed on, like I kind of thought he was going to be, hopefully, he'd be in my team right now, to be honest, as a Spurs asset. But very nice point there from Isaac. He's basically been forgotten about at this point. No trust in Rashford or Sancho. It could be amazing value in my opinion. Well, if you look to the other team, scroll back. Rashford was in that, sorry. So we had a bit of a discussion there. You can also scroll back and see we had a graphic comparing Rashford and his previous season form compared to Martinelli. If you're interested in that, then I'll timestamp it at the end if I do remember to go around to it. Considered Visser at Brentford. Looks a nice starting price. Someone to rotate with Bailey. Yeah, it's not a bad shout. I'm probably not going to spend 10.5 million on midfielders and then rotate them. I'm just not too much of a fan of that. The only rotation I've ever done is 4.5 million defenders and then 4.5 million goalkeepers. Neither of them went particularly well. I always ended up benching keepers when they were getting clean sheets and whatnot. So I'm not too much of a fan of that. I know their fixtures rotate nicely, which is good, and I've made some graphics in the past with regards to that as well. Vissa, I think, is a good shout. I think Tony and Mbeumo, unfortunately, we're seeing a little bit of the limelight as well. He's not going to be as talismanic as I'm sure Neto will be. He's not started an overwhelming majority of minutes in previous years, especially last season. He was off the bench a couple of times, but he has some great underlying data, and I'm sure I think he will be starting, don't get me wrong, this season. So I do like him as an option. Probably my second favourite 5.5 midfielder. I know there's like Jacob Ramsey and Gordon and Aribo at Southampton and other options, but I think Vissa is my second favourite, but it is still behind Neto, basically, is most important. Atini did play in the last pre-season game, so he is technically back from injury. How long he'll stay back from injury, we never know. I always find it interesting with Tierney is that in training photos, I know he's Scottish, but he's always wearing absolutely nothing, even when it looks freezing. So I sometimes wonder whether the fitness staff are doing their jobs properly and whether he's just snapping hamstrings and whatnot because he's actually really cold. But that's obviously a joke. I'm sure the fitness teams are doing exactly what they need to be doing, but I think it is quite funny that he basically wears shorts and t-shirt everywhere. A bit of a, I don't want to stereotype anyone though. So yeah, I'm a bit like that myself. Kind of just wear shorts and t-shirt anywhere. But yeah, back to FPL. This is a fantasy football channel after all. If Mane cost 8 mil, would you have owned Salah? That's interesting. Yeah, I still would have owned Salah because Mane and Díaz would have been in competition, so I would have owned neither. I don't know if you're saying that in the effect that you're saying Díaz is Mane but 8 million, in which case I still own Díaz anyway, so I don't know. But I've owned both of them at the moment, so it's fine. I'm not worried about Díaz at the moment. Sorry, I need to catch up on this chat before we end. But we are getting towards the end of the stream, guys, and we're at 47 likes. I really did want to hit 50. That's what we always try for every week on the channel. So it would be incredible if we could hit that milestone. Thank you. I will shoot through these questions now. Unfortunately, might be a bit of a quick fire question. Darren on Lingard, he's a wait and see for me at Nottingham Forest. Can't go with him over Martinelli, Neto, or anyone like that. But I think he'll be a good option at some point during this season, I'm sure. And if Nottingham Forest can pick up some decent form and surprise everyone by looking like a high goal-scoring team, which, is not beyond the realms of possibility at all, don't get me wrong, I think he could be a very, very nice pick. And could he be on penalties as well? Let us know if you do know about that. But yeah, I'm not sure he'll be on penalties over who Nottingham Forest's number one penalty taker is. What's your pick if Man United, if Cristiano Ronaldo leaves? Basically, I like Martial a lot more. Rashford and Sancho's appeal still probably stays the same, but I don't see Ronaldo starting the first few games of the season. I think Ten Hag's going to use that front three that he's been using in pre-season that we've covered earlier on. I've got Díaz instead of Zinchenko. Do you recommend the change on Soren Zinchenko's minutes? I don't think Zinchenko's going to miss many minutes at all, to be honest. I think he's going to start the majority of them. I'd probably recommend the change. I think that Man City's defence is a little bit weaker with Laporte out. We now know that he's going to miss the start of the season, so I'd probably switch Zinchenko in for Díaz and use the million elsewhere, or even just save it in the bank, to be honest. I'd maybe even do like Zinchenko more, even if they were the same price. But yeah, that's my opinion on that. What's the projected points for your team? This team, I'm not actually sure right now. It changes like every day, so I haven't checked too recently, but I'll do that actually over the stream. I'll head over to the Assistant Manager tool and check out my predicted points. Links in the description for that one as well. But thank you, FPL Feezy. Edison, Zinchenko, Nico versus Ramsdale, Walker, and a 4.5 defender. I'd go with the first option there out of the two of those with Edison and Zinchenko and Nico Williams. What do you think of the 5-2-3 formation? Just think it's too unbalanced, to be honest. I know that some people have got that and then 3 4.5 midfielders on the bench, and I just think it's almost a bit pointless having that formation in the game because it's like you end up with like a Salah and a Neto, but then what if you want someone like a Sterling or an 8 million midfielder? You got to get a lot of money to get your 4.5 mid upgraded. So yeah, Nketiah will play, not Martinelli, says Form. Get Rashford and Ramsdale. Arsenal fixtures are good. I know the Arsenal fixtures are very good, so that's a bold statement there. Does anyone else think that Nketiah will start over Martinelli? It'll be Nketiah, Jesus, and Saka as well. I've seen that a bit, in other videos, but not too much, to be honest. I've seen most people, and the general consensus, from Arsenal fans included, seems to be that Martinelli is going to play. Can I play Nico Williams and Andres Pereira as regular starters and get the third premium? Give me an honest view as you always do. I don't think you can. I don't think... I know Andreas and Nico Williams are good options, but if they don't play, who have you got on the bench there? They're pretty much like two of the very best bench options, basically. The other ones... I know I've mentioned Patterson, I mentioned Da Silva, who, you know, himself is still a minutes risk. There's Colback as well, I guess, but if you've got those guys starting, and then you need someone from your bench, you basically got no one. They're bench players for a reason. They sit on your bench, they're cheap, they come in when you need to. You don't expect more than 2 points from them, basically, is the rule with those guys. So I would not be using them as regular starters. I don't think it's worth it to get the third premium, I'm afraid for them, but it does look exciting when you can do things like that. I think there are better 3-premium drafts, to be honest, if you experiment a little bit more. Johnson took Forrest's last penalty. Okay, so he's been Forrest penalty taker in recent. I'm not sure that Lingard will take over from him. Saliba, I think, is pretty nailed. I don't mind going for him, but I think genuinely, as I've mentioned numerous times, 4.5 defender from Arsenal, not really worth it with Tomiyasu, White and Saliba there. I think that I'd rather go for Zinchenko or Gabriel with a 0.5 more. Don't forget about Emerson Royale at Spurs as well. I always forget about him just because I always think he's performed so badly that he won't end up being in the starting 11, but he always seems to find his way back. I don't really think Conte's a fan of him. I think he'd rather use Doherty number 1 than don't think he'd be converting Lucas Moura back if he thought that he had decent cover at right back or right wing back. So I don't think Royale is too much in Conte's plans at all. Who'd be the starting goalkeeper for Fulham? Basically, I'm looking for a starting goalkeeper at 4.0 mil. You're not going to find one, unfortunately. There isn't one right now. The only prospect we had at the moment was that if Schmeichel left Leicester, then Danny Ward could be at 4.0, but it doesn't look likely that Leicester are going to let Schmeichel go without signing a replacement, so I definitely wouldn't see Danny Ward starting any Premier League games anytime soon, unfortunately. I don't think you're going to find one there. You just got to rely on your first keeper, basically, which, you know, keepers don't get rotated, so you don't have to worry about it too much. So I think it's pretty safe to just go with a starting goalkeeper from any team and then go with a 4.0 keeper on the bench. Raya, okay, we've got a team there from him. I will try and get through it if we get to the end and we don't have too many more questions. Ramsdale, Trippier and Dunk, or Raya, Díaz and Nico Williams. I still have a third City option left as I don't have Haaland. Okay, so Ramsdale, Trippier and Dunk, Raya, Díaz and Nico Williams. Ooh, that's a really tough one, actually. I think it depends. If you're starting Nico Williams, then if you're starting all 3 of these assets, then go with the first set, Ramsdale, Trippier and Dunk. I wouldn't want to be starting Nico Williams every week, basically. So first option there, assuming you're starting the third option of that in your team either way. I prefer Williams to Patterson just about Bashir, but you know, may well be proven wrong. I'm sure that Patterson will come in and be the first choice right back for Everton at this point. To be honest, from game week 1, but at least at some point this season. Not going with Kane. We've discussed Kane. I think that I could well go with him, but it's really, I'm going to make my assessment and final decision after the Community Shield tomorrow. I am just too much on the fence right now to say, but Haaland is in my current draft. Jim to predicted points, a lot of other things going in his favour. Being in such a high-scoring team in terms of expected goals for Man City, they're just unmatched, really. And hopefully, you know, Spurs may get up to their level this season, but I think that will translate into more points for Haaland being in that Manchester City side. Is it worth buying Cucurella already, aiming to be nailed from game week 2 onwards? I don't think so. I think Cucurella is basically an avoid until he's integrated into that Man City side. If he does sign for them, I would not go for Cucurella from game week 1. You patiently answered all my questions, even if they are silly. Thank you so much. Would follow you and attend all the videos. Good night. Oh, well, thank you. And we'll end it on that very positive note, huh? Yeah, so we'll end the stream there, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. We managed to hit our 50 like target as well, which I really, really am grateful for. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. We've been going for over an hour, and yeah, it's been some great chat, some great discussion. I'll go back and add the timestamps. So if you've got any further questions when the stream's ended, leave them down below in the comments, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I'll try my best to read every single comment. So yeah, that is going to wrap up today's stream, guys. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Leave me a thumbs up if you haven't already, and leave some waves in the chat to say goodbye. I wish you all good night, guys. I hope you've had a decent stream or time during the stream, and I'll see you all very soon for my next video here on the channel.